The future is vegan.
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 Hi everyone, it's Jessica, your favorite vegan, and in today's episode, I'm going to be giving an honest recount of my vegan experience. So this covers all the positives, negatives of my journey, and I don't think it's fair, and I think it's super biased if you skew it into one side, where it's an all-beneficial journey, your veganism or your lifestyle change, because it's not. There's reality, and you know, I need to be transparent to my viewers. So I'm going to be tracking back into this, showing a little bit of my journey and talking about experiences that I felt. And as I'm approaching my 1-year anniversary of veganism, which is really exciting. So the first thing I wanted to delve into with this podcast episode is why I went vegan. So I feel like that's such a general question, and, you know, at times it can feel overused, but it's not, because, you know, the motivation factor behind the lifestyle really fuels the future change. So for me, why I went vegan, it started at a turkey trot 5K race. You know, we received these shirts upon entering in the race. It had this turkey and a very suggestive picture with a fork. I was vegetarian for about 7 or so years of my life before I decided to go vegan. And the shirt deeply upset me for a bunch of reasons, and the implying message that turkeys are not intellectual creatures or sociable animals that should be treated with respect and valued beyond the entity of their lives for food to serve as a commodity. But I delved a little bit beyond this in the scale of not just turkeys that are experiencing this exploitation or this abuse, and that a bunch of other animals face this kind of abuse, whether it's in the egg industries or the dairy, whatnot. And it does, when you inherently support the dairy industry, you are supporting the meat industry. And I didn't make the connection when I was vegetarian, and that's what really set me apart from making the change earlier. So once I finally made this connection, whether it was running the race or after the race, I knew from that moment on I wanted to go vegan. And I think it's something about my headstrong attitude towards things, I'm not sure, or my willingness to bring on new change, new challenges. And that day, I decided I want to go vegan, how hard it must be. I remember sitting in my mom's Jeep and telling her I want to go vegan, and she's like, Jessica, this is crazy. You know, vegans can't eat anything. They cut out so many dietary components. And I nevertheless wanted to pursue, and I knew that there must be some way to do it correctly. There must be, you know? And as I continued through this, I remember the first day of my vegan journey, I was solely eating orgain shakes, which I would find out 2 days later actually contained milk and Velveeta bars. But I feel like the attitude behind those feelings and the willingness to make change really carried me far into my journey. And I didn't necessarily know where to start at the beginning of my journey, and I feel like I put too much of myself out into the cause, and I didn't equate it with a little bit of mental health awareness for myself and giving the time that I needed. And this resulted in October of last year, suffering through a couple weeks of activism burnout. This was really hard on me, hard on everything that I stood for, because I had no motivation to really advocate for the causes. And at the moment when I felt like giving up and going back to my old lifestyle, I remembered why I started to begin with. When you find your why, it really fuels change. And the beauty of veganism is that the why can be so open-ended for everyone. It can be a myriad of different things. There's no one set answer to go vegan. You could go vegan for the animals, the environment, for you, for your health. There's so many different reasons, and I think the connection between the differences is our lifestyle and motivation to help animals beyond what may happen in these industries. So that's a little bit about my vegan journey, and I think it's really important to provide context into this when going over my recount of the vegan experience. So next I wanted to touch a little bit on my growth and character change through veganism. So as much as that name implies, I did go through a serious growth attitude. I used to not really personate with this view set of growth over stagnance. I never really understood what it meant. And I thought once you were comfortable somewhere, this is where you were meant to be. But you want to seek all the discomfort. And I think I elaborated on this a little bit more when I wrote the essay for the last episode, where I talked about my experience with discomfort. And I want to seek discomfort going forward. And I think that's a beauty to it, because you can't grow, you can't blossom if you don't step out of your comfort zone. Because you can't make progress through it. Stagnance, you're staying at the same place. So when I started making this shift, it wasn't just a shift from denying dairy or cutting out milk products, I guess. It was a moral shift in attitude, the way that I started perceiving life. That's why I don't refer to veganism as a diet, because it inherently is a lifestyle. It's a way of thinking. I didn't think the same way that I do when I was vegetarian. I mean, the two lifestyles, vegetarian diets and vegan lifestyles, they still do major things for the animals, as much as vegan activists want to discredit their services. I think it's a lot better than doing nothing. And I feel like there's an all or nothing attitude in the vegan community which must stop. And I think even small changes mean all the more difference in this context. So this moral shift really overcame me, and I'm really proud of myself through all my growth, and this has given me a newfound confidence. I would have never seen myself within a year or two ago standing before here today or talking so much about something that I was passionate about. And I think animal advocacy has given me a great outlet to the feelings that I express and conveying them in a meaningful manner. And I think the beauty of animal advocacy is, in activism in general, is finding your own opinion and willing to change. And as I said before, growth. You're not going to stay in the same position. You're not going to hold the same political beliefs or as affiliated to animal advocacy. It's going to change, and that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of the journey. So next, I wanted to talk about finding my voice and utilizing vegan resources. So I didn't initially, when I first went vegan, find a lot of vegan resources at my hands. So it was a little overwhelming at first going vegan because I didn't know where to start. And that's why I found the objects that I thought were vegan. And it was essentially a mono diet. Mono diets are not healthy because they're very nutrient deficient. And it's like solely having an item or two as your dietary and nutritional satisfactions, which is not healthy. And when I first started, I thought I was living a true vegan lifestyle because I was eating vegan. That doesn't mean I was eating healthy. So veganism isn't inherently healthy or unhealthy as compared to other lifestyles. So I think that's something to consider. And once I started doing my own research, because I could not find reliable resources, and condensing it into something that works for me, I realized that I want to do the same for others. The time that I spent looking for resources, I want to make it just as easy for other people to find it, as I felt that satisfaction after understanding the topic, just as you and I feel after understanding a topic after trying to learn it for such a long time. And that's why I created Jessica Talks Veganism. It took me a long time. It took me months to create the website. It was really hard. I'm not going to lie. And the podcast, I got in touch with an amazing studio and I got started. And I just kept moving forward. And I don't know where my future lies, but I know that finding a community that works for me and using my voice to help others and get that resource that I may have not found early on is really what I try to achieve. That's my mission statement. And with that being, I think there are a bunch of other great vegan resources to find for people of the teenage age range, I guess, or even older. There's SOS, which is Students Opposing Speciesism. I'm an active member of it. I'm a hub member, actually. There's a bunch of different ways to stay involved, and it's always great to understand and take a look at your local resources. So next, I would also like to talk about like a shift in maturity also with my political views and whatnot. I think when you go vegan, you start to question a lot of things that may have otherwise been occurring. Like, for instance, when you change your views, like how I did on the dairy industry, I started to question other aspects. And I think there's a beauty in questioning things. We need to be open-minded. We can't just accept things as they are. Of course, that's important, but we need to understand why things work the way they do. And, this means dismantling systems that we may have thought were okay, systems of oppression. We need to dismantle those and try to achieve a good sense of social justice in the world and kind of advocate for the common good. So next I wanted to talk about how veganism was not always easy for me. And, even in the present, it still can be difficult. As much as I make it seem and I talk advocating for the easiness, the flow of a vegan lifestyle, it can help. But at times it's not always going to be easy, but we need to know how to persevere through those feelings and how to get back up. For instance, I thought for the longest time that vegan lifestyles were easy and that it was easy to accommodate with those food needs. I didn't consider food deserts and even restaurants that may not provide vegan options as much as there may be around me. And I discovered this firsthand this summer when I went on a little adventure, and I realized that a lot of places don't carry vegan options, and we have to figure out on our own what to do. So I'm saying here today that veganism is not easy, and finding something that works may not be as simple as 1, 2, 3, or finding a recipe that tastes magnificent. There's trial and error to the whole process, and that's the beauty of it. So staying through the journey will lead to growth. And as I said before, we need to seek growth over stagnance. So veganism is not easy. And as I like to see it from a medical standpoint, as I learned, when the benefits outweigh the side effects, the drug, antibiotic, whatnot, that's in a clinical study may be passed on, which is good. So I like to find the benefits. And for me personally, the moral weight of my opinions and the character that I carry for these animals, for the decisions that I care so much for, that outweighs any side effect or any obstacle that I may face. So next I wanted to talk a little bit about the teenage experience. So being a teen is not always easy. It never really was. It's awkward, it's challenging, and I wanted to talk about criticism, especially for teens. And teens are rapidly changing, teens need high caloric needs, and there's a lot going on. They need a lot of a lot of calories to fuel daily actions. And a lot of this fuel can come to question when it's vegan fuel or plant-based fuel. And I've experienced this where a lot of criticism is directed towards the family, the parents or whatnot, from the plant-based diet. This was more true when I was vegetarian than I am vegan when I was younger, when there was a big reliance on the fuel that I was receiving, but there still is one now. There was criticism, but my mom and my dad continued to back my case. They continued to stand up for me when maybe I wasn't in the room, maybe I wasn't there, and I didn't necessarily find the voice within myself to say the opposite. So I think it's important to learn how to deal with disagreement with others. That's one of the beauties of veganism that I have received. I've had amazing conversations with others that maybe share the opposite views with me. And I love the unknowingness of the situations and the views that you point. I love to see when I get to have another intellectual argument with somebody, and not an argument, but a conversation. I think that's awesome, and we need to have more of those rather than a straight up hardcore interrogation. So I think when you deal with disagreement in a meaningful manner, and maybe even put your own twist, try to help the other person understand where you're coming from, then you can truly seek growth. I used to want in the beginning of my veganism to treat everyone and try to get everyone to become vegan. And I used to mention it a lot in my earlier podcasts, but I don't anymore. I think it's a personal decision, and that's a part of my growth. Through my veganism, I thought that veganism was an end-all, be-all solution to the climate crisis, to whatnot. It can help, mitigate symptoms of the climate crisis, but veganism is not an end-all be-all. I believe for me that veganism is a moral decision. It's not going to be a moral decision for everyone, and that's perfectly okay. That's perfectly acceptable. But for me, that's what works. And that's not going to be the same from somebody else or anyone, for instance. So I need to respect and understand that not everybody is going to find one solution that works for them. I need to focus on the individuality. And next, I would like to talk about the unlikable aspects to animal advocacy programs that I've encountered. So through my vegan experience, I've also encountered a lot of vegetarian hate that I've seen across vegan platforms. And it really upsets me because a lot of their intentions, I understand where they're coming from on those, where vegetarians haven't made the click between dairy and the meat industries. But I don't like where the argument comes from, and I don't like the message that it's underlyingly implying, essentially. Not underlyingly, it is essentially implying. When you basically make a vegetarian hate by saying that they are not making a contribution for animals, or saying that you can't sympathize with the vegan, you are gatekeeping animal rights. I know a lot of animal rights activists that are vegetarian. And, you know, I used to be vegetarian for 7 years. And when I hear people make those comments, those criticisms, you know, a part of me that used to align with those values, it feels like an attack, honestly, attack on my values and my morals. And it's disheartening rather than with a movement driven by love and inclusivity, like veganism, trying to set all animals, all beings on an equal pedestal. This is not doing this. It is not doing that. It is doing the quite opposite. And it becomes exclusivity, and that's when it becomes a gatekeeping community. So when I hear those arguments, I kind of get the opposite message of the love inclusivity, and I try to stay away from those programs because a lot of I became vegetarian when I was around 10 years old, and I did that by my own decision to do that. I had no other member in the family that was vegetarian, and I felt like those attacks that I do see, or those little witty criticisms, if that's how I'm going to put it, that's not nice, and that's wrong. As I said before, focus on the individual, and I think we can make the most meaningful change. I've made the most change throughout my veganism by inspiring others, by leading my own path individually. My mom followed in by becoming vegetarian, and I've inspired a lot of people on the internet through their messages, emails, to continue in these paths by following my own. And by seeking this individuality, I don't pressure others to seek this change, but to find it within themselves, find the why. Because you cannot give somebody inherently a why factor, why to believe in something, because eventually it's going to fade away. They need to find it within themselves. So I also wanted to talk about one of the biggest things with veganism. As much as I love it, I didn't inherently receive any health benefits that are outlined necessarily, but I have found that on a vegan diet, it requires you to eat more. I didn't really understand that, but because a lot of vegan foods are lower calorie dense, that means it's going to take more of those vegan foods, I guess, or plant-based foods, I guess, to satisfy daily calorie requirements. I didn't really understand that. It's not a pro or con, honestly. I mean, if people like having more volume, then that's a true benefit. I'm sure that's most people really like that, and rather than having more calorie dense options. So it depends on how you feel. And as I talked about dining experiences, whatnot, it really can go 50-50. I've had some amazing dining experiences that cater vegan foods. I mean, you've seen throughout my past few episodes, I love going to vegan restaurants, everything. And a lot of the restaurants I feature aren't exclusively vegan, which is incredible. I love finding a vegan option, and it's honestly the best. And as I'm kind of getting back into this, we need to move past the negatives and seek some of the benefits. We need to remember at the end of the day that this is not an individual movement. It's not an individual movement. It's not about us. That's not what veganism is. Maybe we may seek it, our why factor may align with that for health benefits, whatnot, but more so, the vegan philosophy or the lifestyle aligns without the person. It's about creating an equal spectrum. And I'm using my platform in a way that helps other people maybe learn more about this or try to understand this. I'm not using my platform to necessarily abuse the title of veganism for views, whatnot. I follow the lifestyle wholeheartedly, and I'm using it as a mere platform to express my views, moral beliefs, and whatnot. And through this, I would like to close today's meeting with a big understanding factor that I want you to remember. In a moment that you may be unsure or beginning a new journey, a new chapter of your life, maybe you're going into college, maybe you're going into high school, so many different points of growth in our lives that we may not account for. Remember to seek growth over stagnance in every moment. It may feel hard, it may feel weird almost. It's like crossing your arms like this instead of like normal. Over time, it's going to feel better. It's going to ultimately propel you to more change. So with that, I say go seek all the growth. Bye, everyone.